friends, welcome to Tony Renee at Home. We are continuing to stock our pantry with canning some store-bought vegetables. This is one of the easiest things to do. They do have to be pressure canned. So if you have a pressure canner, you're not quite sure how to use it, or if you just want a different way to can vegetables that you've never thought of before, one of the easiest things to do is can store-bought vegetables, and that's what I'm doing today. I have some corn and some mixed vegetables that I'm going to be canning, and I am going to now take you over to the stove. I pretty much have everything set up, and then I will show you how to do it. Okay, let's concentrate on what's going on here right now. I have clean, empty jars, and I have my corn, and I have my mixed vegetables. These are the same bags that I used for dehydrating in our last video. They're the 2-pound bags of great value from Walmart. Now I have you set up on my right hand side, and I am right-handed, so there is a possibility I'm going to get in the way of the camera like that. But this is why canning home, nope. This is why canning frozen vegetables from the store is so easy, especially if you're learning to can. This is a very easy way to do it. Now, these are mostly thawed. I would prefer that they be pretty much all the way thawed, because that's the closest to what they would be if you just got them from the garden. But all we are going to do is pour these vegetables into our jars. Uh-oh, I have some dogs that are getting ready to bark, I think. Now, you want to leave 1-inch headspace. Headspace is the area between your food and your lid that sits on your jar. So, when you put this lid on, there should be 1 inch of space, head space, between the food and the bottom of this jar. Does that make sense? Okay, so I'm going to finish filling up these jars. And we might have to take a little out. We might have to add a little more. It looks like 1 2-pound bag is going to fill 4 jars. Okay? Let's open up another bag. And just continue to fill these jars. Oops, that's way too much. I will try to stay out of the way of the camera as much as possible. I apologize if I get in the way. But all I'm doing is filling the jars. Okay, so we have 8 jars of mixed vegetables from 2 2-pound bags. Let's check our headspace. You want to always be sure that your hands are clean. That one needs some more. Always be sure that your hands are clean, your jars are clean, all of your utensils are clean, your workspace is clean. And if you need to redistribute from jar to jar like I'm doing to make it pretty much even, that's fine. Because your hands are clean, you can touch your food. All right, now let's do our corn the same way. I love to can frozen corn. It tastes just like fresh when you're done. this one could use a little bit more. Now, remember that I said 1 2-pound bag filled up 4 of these pint jars. Anytime that you figure something like that out, that's some information that you want to add to your canning books or to any of your canning journals or whatever, if you're keeping a canning journal. That way you will know how many bags to buy of corn or mixed vegetables or whatever you're canning, so you can run a full canner of just that particular thing. Now, I don't have a full bag of corn here. I forgot about that. This bag has already been busted into. Hopefully, though, I can get at least 2 jars out of this. Perfect. I'm going to do a little bit of cleanup here, get rid of these bags and stuff, and then I'll come right back. So we have our vegetables in our pint jars. The next thing we're going to do, if you want to season them before you can them, we're going to add per pint a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And I'm using canning salt. You can use pink Himalayan if you want. I'll do this left-handed. I'll attempt to do this left-handed, so I'm not in the way. And if you continue to do everything in a sequence, move my canner out of the way again, then you won't forget where you've been, which is something that I have done before. So per pint is a 1/2 teaspoon. If you were doing this in quarts, it would be a teaspoon. Or you don't have to season them with salt at all. Just season as you cook, if you like. All right. So now we have our food in our jars. We have seasoned with a 1/2 teaspoon of salt per jar. Next is to fill the jars up with water. Again, to an inch headspace. And if you get too much water, it's fine. You can get a spoon and take it out. If you lose a little bit of your salt, that's not the end of the world. If you have water that has a lot of chemicals in it, I wouldn't use that. Before I even worry about the 1-inch headspace right now, I'm going to debubble. This is a debubbler. If you don't have one of these canning tools that comes in a canning kit, or you can buy them separately online. So we're just moving this around in our jars because you want to get all the air out that you can, as much air as possible. Now, the reason that I didn't worry about those that were overfilled or underfilled at this point is because when you debubble and it moves those vegetables around in that jar, it causes the vegetables to sink because of the absence of air, and they are no longer overfull. So you've filled your jars with your vegetables, you've seasoned if you choose to, you've added your water to within 1 inch of headspace. Now we want to be sure that these rims are clean before we put you want to be sure that these jars are clean before we put our lids on. I have just a little bit of white vinegar in here. Wring that out just a little bit, and because I did use salt, I'm going to run this around the rims of these jars just to be sure there's no salt And also, as I do this, I'm paying attention to whether or not I feel any nicks in these jars, because anytime you feel a nick or you see a crack in your jar, it is no good for canning. Or anything else for that matter. I'd throw it away. Okay. So we're all good. You've filled your jars with your vegetables, you've seasoned, you've added your water, you've debubbled, you've cleaned your rims, and now you can add your lids. I am a little OCD and like that my lids and the emblem or the name on the jar match. You don't have to do that, but that is what I'm doing, just so you know. Please don't send me any hate comments or give me any hate comments because of that. And then we put our clean, washed lids on. Okay, and now we're going to tighten down our rings, and this is important, or bands. Tightening down lids. When you're pressure canning, they're supposed to be finger tight, and all that means is this is loose right now. It can't go any farther, and I just give it a little bitty tiny twist, because the air, when we pressure can, any air and any enzymes that are in here are coming up and out. We are processing these. You don't want to crank them down. That's on there tight now. You don't want to do that, because then your air can't come out. And you will also ruin your lids. You'll see that they'll buckle on you, and if that happens, it's usually because they're tightened down too tight. So, as far as it will go, and then a tiny twist with your fingers. Now, I am going to finish doing all of this, putting on my lids so it won't go anymore, and then just a tiny twist. Not hard by any means. Well, there we go. And sometimes you just throw those bands across the room. Okay? And I'm going to start putting these in my canner to get them out of the way. Okay, I have one row of jars down here. I have an All-American. So in the bottom of my All-American, I have somewhere between 2 and 3 inches of water. I have my jars, as many as will fit in here. I can't fit any more on the bottom because I'm using pints. There's another tray that sits on top, and then I can do a second layer of jars. Now that I have all of my jars in here, something else that I have not done in a while and need to do, the All-American doesn't take a seal. There's no seal in the lid of an All-American. It is metal on metal, and that is one of the reasons that I like it. But because of that, you need to be sure that this edge here, where it's going to meet your lid, stays lubricated, because you don't want it to stick, and that's all I'm doing. just have some olive oil on my fingers and just running that around the rim so it doesn't stick. All right, and now we're ready to put the lid on. And you will have to follow the directions for your canner. And because my food was still just a teeny tiny bit frozen, and so it was cold, my water is also cold. It wasn't really cold, but it's not hot, and you don't want it to be hot. Now I'm going to turn it on high to start, and again, this will depend on your stove, but I want to bring it up to a boil. We went over this in my canning basics video. This is your vent pipe. When this starts steaming and spitting is the next thing that we are going to look for. I have my stove on high. This will come up to a boil inside, and this will start spitting and steaming. I will bring you back and show you what that looks like when we get to that point. Let me hop in here and mention something real quick. Some people will pour the extra vinegar from when they cleaned their lids into their canner. I don't do that. I think that it discolors my bands or my rings, and because I use good water in my canner anyway, I've never had a problem with cloudiness in my jars. If you do, you might want to consider doing that. Use the rest of the vinegar from cleaning your rims, toss it in your canner. If you feel like after you're done canning your jars look a little cloudy, this will help take care of it. Can you hear that? And can you see how it's spitting? That is now venting. So once this venting starts and it's really strong and heavy like that and spitting, you time that for 10 minutes. So I'm going to set the timer on my stove for 10 minutes, and I'll come back and show you what we do after that. Okay, timer's going off, so it's been 10 minutes. Now, because I have a weighted pressure canner, which means I have, if I can get it in there, woo, that's hot. I have a weight. You can see the 5 and the 15. I need 10 for my altitude. This 10, the hole there, goes over my vent pipe. Now I'm going to turn my stove down to about 4. I've done this enough to know just about where my stove needs to be set. And so I set mine on 4, somewhere between 3 and 4. Now, if anyone has anything to say, yes, I am canning on a flat top stove. There are people who say, do not do it. I have done it for years and years and years and years, and I'm talking 20 plus years. This is the second stove I've had, and I've never had a problem. It's never made a mark. The stoves today are different than what they used to be. And this is a brand new stove. It's about 2 years old. So I'm not concerned about it at all. So anyway, this, when it comes up to pressure, and that would be 10 pounds for my altitude. 10 pounds. which gives me a temperature of 240 degrees. This little weight is going to start jiggling, and then we will start our processing. Now I am using the USDA Guide to Home Canning, and you will see that for whole kernel corn below 1,000 feet, it processes for 55 minutes. But for mixed vegetables, you will see for a weighted gauge canner, it's 75 minutes. Anytime you are processing two different things in your canner, and they process at two different times like my vegetables do, always go with the highest amount of time. So even though my corn only calls for 55 minutes, I'm going to do 75 minutes for my pints because my mixed vegetables need more time to process. It's not going to hurt the corn at all, but you need to be sure that you process it the right amount of time for everything. So when this comes up to 10 pounds of pressure, that will start jiggling, and we will start the processing time at 75 minutes. I'll bring you back then. Okay, we're jiggling, and we are right at 10 pounds of pressure. So, like I said, because our mixed vegetables are going to take longer than our corn, we are going to process for 75 minutes. So, set my timer. For 75 minutes on my stove. And I will come back and show you what we do next. See, you guys, this is not hard at all. It's very easy. There are a few steps, but they're not hard steps. So get your canners out, or go buy one if you don't have one. And let's get started canning and stocking your pantry. Okay, our timer's going off. The next thing you do, turn off your stove. That's it. What you're looking to happen, you want your gauge to come all the way back down to 0. It will take about 20 to 30 minutes. It is, there we go, 3:59. I will come back when this is back down to 0. We'll see how long it took. Okay, it's 4:40. It is back down to 0. And the only thing that you need to do right now is take that weight off. You can hear it letting that steam escape. Now, you want to be sure that you use some kind of hot pad or something, because that will be seriously hot. You can still see the steam is escaping. As soon as that's done, and it only takes a few minutes, then you're going to undo your toggles. And I do them opposite, so when I do this one over here, I do this one just opposite of it, and I do them both at the same time. Now, these still are not ready to come out of the canner. Sorry, I messed up on what I was saying here. Don't take your lid completely off of your canner just yet. Prop it up on the side for 5 minutes. Okay, it's been 5 minutes with the lid just propped up here on the side. Now, technically, you are supposed to take the weight off and wait 10 minutes before you do anything. And then after 10 minutes, you can just remove the lid. But I break it up and do 5 minutes with it just sitting here on the side. And then I do 5 minutes with the lid completely off. So when you do this, you want to be sure and remove the lid away from you. And then we're just going to set it off to the side. And now I'm going to wait another 5 minutes. You can hear them already sealing. And I'll wait another 5 minutes with them in the canner just like this. So now we are ready to take our jars out of the canner. Pick your jars straight up. You don't want to turn them sideways because if they're not sealed, it could cause your water to come out of your jar. So always lift them straight up, even if there is water on top of the jar. You can wipe that off if you must. Lifting straight up, taking the jars out. Don't set them too close together. Now these will have water all over the top. Still just want to lift them straight up and set them over on a towel. The lids may be loose. Do not retighten your lids. Leave them alone. They are doing exactly what they need to do. So here's our jars. I have them setting on a towel. Don't set them directly on your counter, especially if you have something like granite, because they can be very cold and you don't want to put a hot jar on a cold countertop. So I actually have 2 layers of towels here. One is fine, but because they're tea towels, they're a little thin. So I have 2. These look perfect. They're already popping and sealing. And now you leave these alone for 12 to 18 hours. I will see you back then and we'll finish this up. This is the next morning. These are completely cooled. See how there's no more separation in any of the jars? So don't freak out if you have a little bit of separation here in the middle like I did. It settles down. It's just part of the process. So the last thing we do with our jars is take off the rings. And then we give these, well, first of all, I should say, check all of your seals. Make sure everything's sealed. And everything has. Then you take off your rings. And we are going to wash them in some warm, slightly soapy, just a little bit of soap. And I add some vinegar as well, because that cuts through any grease that might be on here, or oils that might be on here that have escaped from these veggies. So I'm going to get these off and we'll go over to the sink. I got this at a little boutique in Jonesboro, Arkansas, when my daughter and I went shopping last week. Oh my goodness, it smells so good. It is from the Bridgewater Candle Company. If that will focus, I do not know. So just a little bit of water, and you don't want a whole bunch of water in here. These are just pints. Adding just a splash of vinegar, like I said, to cut through any oils. That is plenty of water. Washcloth. And we just wash off our jars. They might siphon a little bit, and siphoning is something that we haven't really talked about before. That's when, as the air is being pulled up out of your jars, it'll also bring up some of your juice out of it sometimes. So again, as long as you're sealed, don't worry about it. This one looks, well, I was trying to find one that looks like it might have had some siphoning, but I am not finding any at the moment. They're all still pretty much at 1-inch level. So you're just going to wipe off the tops, wipe around the edges, and then it's okay to turn them now. They're cooled. They are sealed. So turning them sideways isn't going to hurt anything. I will give these a good rinse. Then we will dry them off and label them and find a place for them. Actually, I already have one in your pantry. You will find a place for them and put them in your pantry. So I'm just taking a clean towel. I wipe off the tops, wipe off the rim, and then wipe off the rest of the jar. Set it to the side, and I'll get all of these done. And the only thing I do, I can way too much to be making pretty little labels. So I just write it on the top. I don't reuse my lids unless it's one that's been perfectly taken off, and I might reuse it for vacuum sealing or on a jar to make some, to store something in the fridge. It's too much of a process to try to reuse a lid only to have it fail. So I don't even go there. And you can see my OCD, the ball emblem logo, and the ball logo on the jar line up. Don't make fun of me. That's not nice. All right, I'm going to get these finished up. And then we'll label. Okay, I can tell that this is mixed vegetables, and I can tell that this is corn. So I'm not writing mixed vegetables or corn on top of these jars. When I can tell what it is, the only thing I do is write the month and the year. That's all I do. And I have them all turned. I'm right-handed. I have them all turned. So all I have to do is stand here and go from one to the other. Just makes it go a little bit faster. It's worth the upfront, making sure they're all turned to me, than to have to stand and turn each one individually, or if you're just going to write it in the middle of the lid, you may not even care. Be sure and subscribe because I have a lot more stocking your pantry videos coming out. I'm getting ready to can some beans, and we will do some more dehydrating and freeze drying as well. But in the meantime, give me a like, be sure and subscribe and ring the bell, and I will see you in the next one. Be sure, if you haven't watched the basics of canning, I will link that wherever it ends up being for you, and you can go watch that, and that may answer any questions that you might have. Take care, and God bless.